Mishlei Perek Yutet, Pasuk Tedvav, 15. Atzlat apil tardema v'nefesh remiyah tir'av. Laziness causes one to fall in a deep sleep, and the deceitful soul shall suffer hunger. He appears to be talking about two different things, laziness and one who's deceitful, but the end result is the same. One who is lazy, as a result of his laziness, what laziness does is it destroys one's will. One may have had a will, a desire, a plan to accomplish something, but because he's lazy, he never carries it out. He never is able to achieve what he set out to do. The same thing with one who is deceitful. What is one who is deceitful? He wants to make it rich fast, through deceit. At the end, what happens? Tir'av, he will go hungry. In other words, he will not accomplish what he set out to do. That's what the two have in common. The one who's lazy doesn't get things done. The laziness destroys his will. Eventually, he doesn't accomplish what he had planned to accomplish. And the same thing with one who's deceitful. Deceitful? Deceitful. Who decided that it's deceit and not deceit? I don't know. It makes no difference. So, in the same way, one thinks that he can make it through trickery, through being dishonest, but in the end, nothing is accomplished. There's no beracha. In talking about laziness, he mentions how terrible this midah is various times in the Sefer. What happens with laziness is not only the people who are lazy, not only don't they get things done quickly, not only does the laziness hurt the actual act, the actual plan, in delaying it or in postponing it, even once they set off to do whatever it is that they're doing, it takes them 3 or 4 times as long to do. So laziness all around is hurtful. Not only does it delay one's plans, but even once one begins to do whatever it is that he wanted to do, it takes him much longer. And that leads us to the next pasuk. I believe that there is a very strong connection. Not all the pasukim necessarily have to have a connection, but perhaps the next pasuk does have a connection to laziness. He points out the importance of shomer mitzvah, shomer nafsho, one who observes the mitzvot, is careful with the mitzvot. He's basically not only observing the mitzvah, he's as a result of that observing his life. He's guarding his life. Let's see how he translates over here. He who keeps a commandment keeps his soul. Okay, watches his soul, guards his soul. And bozeh drachav yamut. Who he despises his ways will die. When one sees a mitzvah, when one has the opportunity to do the mitzvah, the rabbis tell us, be careful, al tachmitzena. Don't push it off, don't delay it. Go ahead and take care of it, because you don't know if it's going to come back again. Shomer mitzvah means that one is as concerned about the mitzvah as he would be about making money. A lot of people would not give up an opportunity to make another deal. They'd get up early, or even to catch a flight. If something is very important to you, you go out of your way to do it. And the same it should be with mitzvot. And he reminds us that what you're doing really is, it's not only observing the mitzvah, ki'u chayecha ve'orech yamecha, shomer nafsho, you're guarding your soul. In other words, this mitzvah may be actually saving your life. It may be a protection down the road. If one becomes sick and he's going through a major operation, he needs all the credits and all the militzei yosher, all the defense angels to come to his defense at a time of danger. And when one is going through surgery, that is a time of danger. You need a lot of defense. So shomer mitzvah, one who is concerned about performing the mitzvah, does not let go of it, does not delay it. He's really shomer nafsho. He's doing himself a tremendous favor. The other way around, however, bozeh drachav yamut, one who despises his ways, one who is not careful with the mitzvot, one who is careless. Just like one who's careless about his own physical body. He doesn't diet, he doesn't exercise, eats anything bli cheshbon, without calculating the risks of what he's doing. Then yamut, then he's killing himself. That is exactly what people do when they oversmoke. I say oversmoke because those who are smoking 1 cigarette a day, I won't be overly strict with them, but even one is no good. But alevai should be only one. But the ones who are heavy smokers, it's a fact that they're killing their lungs. So that's a form of bozeh drachav. One is despising or belittling, being disrespectful, being careless of his own body. So bozed rachav, being disrespectful of one's ways, in other words, being careless, not caring about what one does, in the end, yamut, you will not be able to survive. There's another important point in this pasuk about shomer mitzvah as opposed to bozeh rachav. There are times when we are challenged. There are times that certain mitzvot become very difficult to perform. Let's say somebody has to go to university somewhere where there's no shul. There is a shul, but it's far away, where it's hard to get kosher, where for a woman it's difficult to go to a mikveh. Whatever reason, even if he's not going for the university, he's going for a job offer, he's going for a period of time, and he's going to be in a difficult, challenging situation. His mitzvot will be challenged. Shomer mitzvah, one who is very careful, lo litpasher velo levater, not to compromise, not to give up. This mitzvah that he does has extra power. Any mitzvah that one does as a result of a challenging situation, not only is his reward greater, the tzara agra, as the Rabbi tells in Pirkei Avot, according to the effort is one's reward, but the mitzvah itself has more power. Not only during challenging times, but also any mitzvah that one never gives up no matter what. Give you an example. Seudat melaveh malka is a mitzvah that not too many people are aware of. It's not a mitzvah written in the Torah, but it's a very important meal. And it's called a mitzvah because, in a sense, it's required. There's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch that one should set his table Motzei Shabbat and eat a fourth meal, Seudah David HaMelech. And people are just not aware of it. People have excuses that they're full, that they don't want to sit down. But it's a very important Seudah, and whoever is careful with that and never gives it up, there have been stories of that, what appears to be an insignificant thing, saving their life. Just that one mitzvah. Why? Not because they fulfill it, because they do it all the time, they never miss. That's the point of shomer mitzvah, means you never miss. What does it mean you never miss? Imagine somebody who is in, you've probably never heard of this, Ulan Bator. Does anybody know here where that is?
Mongolia.
Oh, very good. How do you know? Yeah, how do you know?
I know.
Okay, very good. Surprised. Ulan Bator, or Ulaanbaatar for Americans, is the capital of Mongolia. Yeah. If somebody is there, okay, and it's Motzei Shabbat, and he finished all his matzah gefilte fish that he brought along for the Shabbat meals, he says, oh no, what am I going to do for Seudah Revi'it now, for Melaveh Malka? He gets into his rental car, and he drives for 50 miles, because the next gasoline station, what desert runs through Mongolia, do you know? You know what desert runs? Oh, very good, yeah, Baruch Hashem. Okay, the Gobi Desert. So there's not too many gasoline stations in the Gobi Desert. And so he looks for the nearest shop where he can pick up some food. Right? There's some kosher food there maybe too, imported from the United States. But he has to travel for 50 miles. Finally, he gets there, and it's already 2 o'clock in the morning, but he still goes there, and he gets himself some beer or some soda and some crackers with an OU, of course, picks up a can of tuna, fish, or whatever there is, and, makes his Seudat Revi'it. Now, that was Mesirut Nefesh. That was a real effort made. But why did he do it? I'm not giving up Seudat Revi'it under any circumstance. I'm going to do whatever I can. And when somebody does try hard, Hashem helps him. There have been stories of people who had no place to go, no place to eat. They were stuck in some place. And somehow, miraculously, Hashem made them find what they were looking for, whether it was another Jew or some food or whatever it is. Yes?
Before you were talking about Shalashus as the meal?
No, Seudat Revi'it. That's the fourth meal.
For what?
Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night, the Seudah of David HaMelech.
The loose bone gets fed by that.
Right. In other words, Motzei Shabbat, sometime Saturday night, sometime at 11, 12 o'clock, not too late, you should sit down and have a warm meal, ideally warm meal, ideally wash your hands, and eat another meal. It doesn't have to be a big meal. It could be something small, and that's called the Seudah of David HaMelech. That's the fourth meal of Shabbat. Ideally, you should wash, but you don't have to if you can't.
That's on Motzei Shabbat?
That's on Motzei Shabbat, yeah.
You could go have some pizza.
Yes, as long as you have in mind that this is for Seudah Revi'it, and you wash your hands, if you could have a couple slices of pizza, yes.
Is that the same as the Malava?
That's Melaveh Malka. Yeah, we're accompanying the queen of Shabbat. It's called Melaveh Malka, or Seudah Revi'it, or Seudah Shel David HaMelech. He's the one that began with it. Anyway, I give you an example of a mitzvah that not everybody is careful with, but one who's very careful, Shomer Mitzvah, Shomer Nafsho. This could be a lifesaver that will protect him. Where somebody who's careless, who's disrespectful, will not have that merit, will not have that to his credit. Next pasuk, Malveh Adonai Honen Dal Ugmulo Yishalem Lo. He who is gracious to a poor man lends to Hashem, and Hashem will repay him his reward. We're talking about loans over here. One who lends a poor man, Hashem will repay him. Not only will he repay him the loan, he will also repay him, he will reward him. These are one of the mitzvot that one benefits from in this world, haperot, ba'olam hazeh v'keren kayemet le'olam haba, the fruit in this world, and the principle still remains intact for the world to come. Most mitzvot you get the principle, the reward in olam haba. There are certain things certain mitzvot that one benefits from them directly in this world. Some benefit is derived from them. Tzedakah or halva'ah, lending money is a bigger mitzvah than giving charity. Why is that? Because when you lend a poor man money, you are sparing his dignity. He didn't beg you. He actually took a loan. Lending can also be a favor to the rich, where tzedakah is usually to the poor. Lending, therefore, is on a higher level, a higher madrigah than a loan. Now, what does he say over here that he's lending to Hashem? Because Hashem tells him, you can trust me that I will repay you in case he doesn't. And there's a story that I've told in the past with Mr. Rothschild. A stranger came to town, needed some money to open up his business. He couldn't get the money because nobody knew who he was. He's a stranger. So he was told to go to Mr. Rothschild. Mr. Rothschild says, I'll gladly lend you the money, but I need a co-signer. What if you don't give me back the money? He says, I don't know anybody here in town, but God will be my co-signer. So Mr. Rothschild says, oh, that's good for me. Hashem is your co-signer, that's good enough for me. And he gave him the money. About 2-3 months later, the man came back to Mr. Rothschild to repay his loan. Mr. Rothschild says, it's okay, your co-signer already paid me back. Yeah. So that's exactly the idea over here. Malveh Hashem honen dal. You're lending it to Hashem when you give the money, plus you're going to get back more. Just one warning. Anytime you lend money, don't lend more money than you're willing to lose. Lend it, if it's more than $5, or more than 10, depending on how much money you have, do it with witnesses and a contract. Not because you don't trust the guy, but something may happen to him. And if something happens to him, he may not be able to repay you, even if you wanted to. So therefore, if there's at least a contract, the state will pay for it. So why take a chance? Murphy's Law, remember, if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. So why take a chance? So there's a halakha. That's the halakha. It's not just good advice. Halakha is you're not allowed to give a loan without a contract, without witnesses, unless it's a very small amount of money that you don't mind. Or, if deep in your heart you say, you know what, I don't expect the money to come back, I forgive the loan. If you can afford that, that's fine. But just remember, anytime you cannot afford to lose, don't even give it. Because there's a 50% chance that of a loan that you give that will not come back. 50% chance. For all sorts of reasons. The guy just doesn't have the money, the guy doesn't want to, the guy right away, the guy died, the guy got sick. There's so many possibilities. So just remember, as long as you can live with it, fine. If you can't, don't give it. You don't have an obligation to get a heart attack, to lose sleep. You have a mitzvah to give a loan if you can handle it, to handle the consequences of the loan. Otherwise, don't give it. And if you do, give it with witnesses. But it's a big mitzvah, and that's why he reminds us over here that don't hesitate to give a loan if you can. Helping the man with a loan is a bigger mitzvah than with tzedakah because you're sparing his dignity. And a loan means that you are somehow connected to him from now on. Tzedakah, here, take it and leave. You have nothing else to do with him. The loan, you still have a connection with him. Next pasuk. Yaser bincha ki yesh tikva ve'lhamito al tisa nafshecha. Chastise or rebuke your son, for there is hope, but do not set your heart on his destruction. I don't like his translation. Let me tell you what it means approximately. Yaser bincha ki yesh tikva. If somebody has a child who's not going b'derech HaTorah, and all the schooling did not help, Yaser bincha, rebuke him. Give him musar. Now what does it mean, give him musar? It does not only mean with words. It means, if you need to, give him a mild slap. In the right place, of course. That's what it means. Why? Because if you do it consistently, yesh tikva, there's hope. There's still hope for this child, that even though as a teenager he's still rebellious, even though all your rebuking did not help, the fact that you've given it to him for a while in a mild way, and I emphasize in a mild way, there is hope that someday he will wake up. He will remember his father, remember the good days, realize that he was wrong, he has become more mature, and he will turn around. And this has happened to many children. Why is it important to make it mild? Because you don't want to destroy your relationship with your child. You still want to have it's like they say in English, you don't want to burn your bridges. Remember that expression? The same thing with a child. You want him to be able to come back. You want him to have a way out, or in this case a way in case he's out. A way in, so he can knock on the door and come back home, sweet home. Where there's some parents who say, I don't want to see your face. That's not right. Yes, unless he's a complete rasha, even then you have to be careful, yes.
Could you please define what you mean by mild, and does it also apply to a girl?
Yes, it applies to everyone, and mild means using a shoelace and not a big rope. That's what the commentaries say. The commentaries say, use a shoelace and don't use a big heavy rope or a whip. In other words, don't overdo it. You know, one has to be careful not to give a makat oyev, the commentators tell us. A makat oyev means a hit of an enemy, out of anger. It has to be a disciplined hit. It has to be that you have to be in control of yourself. It has to be for the sake of rebuking, and not because you're so upset you had a bad day and now you're venting your anger at him. That's not rebuke. That's just losing control. Yes?
Up to what age would you strike a child?
Up to bar mitzvah. After bar mitzvah, the rabbis completely discourage it. They actually say it's a sur if you do it too harsh, because he might hit back. So you are therefore causing him to commit a transgression by hitting his father. So you don't want to prompt him to react. So you have to judge the situation very carefully after the child has become bar mitzvah and he's a teenager. What does it mean, judge the situation? If something requires tremendous rebuke, you have to perhaps use some other measures, strict measures, but not the hit. And if you hit, even then, mildly. And I have and I've always emphasized what the rabbis tell us, that a child, you have to deal with a child with small dochavi min mekarevet. Rabbis tell us that applies to a child, applies to the Yetzer Hara, and applies to a woman. Small dochavi min mekarevet means the left hand pushes off and the right hand brings back. What does that mean? Your left hand is usually the weaker hand. So when you rebuke, when you slap, do it with your weaker hand. In other words, do it gently. But when you embrace, use your right hand. Now what did they mean? They meant two things. They meant if you do rebuke, do it softly, use your left. And when you do embrace, use your right hand. That's one idea. The second idea is, if you did rebuke, then just make sure you don't forget to also embrace. Teheh small docha v'yemin mekarevet means, if you're already going to rebuke, remember a half an hour later, give him a kiss, give him a hug. Remind him that you still love him. Don't let him just remember the slap in the face or the rebuke, the harsh words. Let him see that you really like him too. Have a word with him. Go for a walk with him. Treat him out. In other words, the child has to see both sides of the parent. If there's a need for the rebuke, make sure you compensate it, not right away, so you don't confuse him, but a couple hours later or the following day with the other side, with the loving side. Yeah.
How about some punishments through material things, like money or like this?
Yeah, we spoke about it last week, and this is also applicable here. that when you give rebuke, you have to restrict, you have to limit. You cannot give him what he wants. But you have to also explain very well. You really have to have a conversation. Because you really have to explain. The child should not think that you are punishing him, that it's for his benefit. He may not accept it still, but it's at least you've done your job properly. So you want to explain a lot, you want to talk to him, but you do not want to just not do anything. Ki yesh tikva. If you follow this consistently, you do it properly and gently, there is hope that at some point he will turn around. That's where he adds, Ve'elhamito al tisan avshecha. Don't overdo it so you don't kill him. Right? Ve'elhamito. That's what it means, ve'elhamito. Do not set your heart on his destruction. In other words, you're not going out to overdo it. Yes?
Can one parent do the rebuking and the other one do the hugging?
Well, no, that's not such a good idea. Because then they'll always run to the same parent.
No,
Yeah.
you can alternate.
Huh?
Sometimes the father does the rebuking and the mother the hugging, and then the mother the rebuking and the father the hugging, or?
It's not recommended that way. Yeah. Actually, sometimes the women ruin it by being so compassionate and merciful. And when they either go ahead and remove the child from their father, or they do even worse, they rebuke the father for being too tough. Now, sometimes a father can be very tough, so that's understandable, but so many times the woman just should really stay out, because that neutralizes the whole effect of what the father is trying to communicate. That happens too often with too many couples. Yes.
Following up, just for girl children, for daughters, so the mother shouldn't be the one who would strike, the father can strike the daughter?
Well, I wouldn't use the word strike. It sounds too strong.
Well,
Yeah. Touch maybe, yeah.
Call what you want.
Yeah. Well, it makes a difference.
Touch, whatever you want to
Yeah, yeah. Usually the women are not capable of doing something like that, unless they're very tough, They pinch maybe, but usually they call their husband, you take care of this problem.
And for daughters up to Bas Mitzvah?
Approximately, yeah, sure, because haven't you heard of stories of girls running away from the home? You don't want that to happen. So you have to judge a situation carefully of how much to do it, when to do it, for what to do it, for what reason to do it. You don't want to give a patch for just anything. If somebody was careless, why should you give them a patch? It wasn't really their fault. What is that going to accomplish? So you really have to be logical about it. A patch really is reserved for something totally not, that you cannot tolerate, that was terrible. Chutzpah, but chutzpah after having been warned, exactly. Yeah.
Mr. Left,
Okay.
It's funny that you mentioned that the man is hard. I've observed that the woman is harder on the people.
Moroccan women, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Their husbands are in trouble too sometimes. Yeah. It depends from which part of Morocco. Not your part of Morocco. They're sweet. Yeah.
You're talking about the children who is rebellious.
Right.
You're not talking about any child.
I'm not talking about just rebellious. I'm talking about situations that are not acceptable. This is a form of teaching, a form of instruction. And the rabbis very much emphasize this, and he said it before, he who holds back his whip in the end ends up hating his child. So you want to sometimes, not all the times, use this means of communicating to your child that something is very, very wrong. All right, let's go on. If one does not do it, another interpretation, if one does not do this, then ve'lamito al tisan avshecha, you're causing his death. We said before that if you overdo it, it's like you're causing his death. Another way to understand this is if you don't do it, you're bringing about his death. In other words, you're ruining it for him. So this is for the benefit of the child, and that's what he has to understand. He always needs to know that this is being done for his benefit. The next pasuk is a little difficult to understand in the various interpretations. Gedol chema or gedal chema nose onesh ki im tatzil ve'od tosif. Here, let's see, he translates that a hot-tempered man incurs punishment, but if you save, you will yet increase. Didn't tell you too much. It means like this. It has something to do with the pasuk beforehand. Somebody gets upset and gets angry. Gedol chema. Noseh onesh, then he will carry the punishment. A person who gets overly angry, then he will act out of anger. He may overdo something. And by overdoing it, he will be punished. He will be punished for his anger, or he will be punished for causing the harm that he caused as a result of his anger. It could be as a result of his anger, it caused the child to become worse, or to do something else. So anger is obviously something that one has to be very careful with. The point that he's also trying to say over here is that that is not the way to get the situation resolved, just by becoming angry at the child. Ki im tatzil ve'ot tosif, even if you succeed to get across to the child the message that you're upset at him, and at this time, tosif, ve'ot tosif means you will have to go back and get angry and angry again and again. In other words, one of the ways of interpreting this pasuk is that anger by itself is not a means of rebuke, because if that's what you use to get across your message, you will have to repeat and repeat your message, and you will not accomplish anything. What you accomplish may be temporarily. Ki im tatzil, temporarily, you are saving him, then you will have to go back and do it again and again. I'd like to suggest another interpretation of this pasuk that the commentators do not say, even though they do say something close to this, that this pasuk is very similar to the one that says, Chosech shivto soneh beno, one who holds back his whip, ends up hating his child. And this is how you would read the pasuk. Gedol chema noseh onesh, ki im tatzil ve'ot tosif. You're only increasing the anger, you're only making it worse if noseh onesh, if you carry the punishment. In other words, you hold it back, you don't punish the child. Ki im tatzil, if you're overprotective of your child, ve'ot tosif, then things will become worse. In other words, he will continue to do what he did. In other words, it doesn't pay to hold back, to be too forgiving, because in the end, the situation can get worse. Next pasuk, Shema etzah vekabel musar leman techkam be'achritecha. Now in this pasuk, he's talking to the son. Listen to the advice and accept discipline in order that you may be wise in your later years. He's talking to the child. Listen to your father. Listen to what he has to tell you, even though you don't agree with him. It's not because he's wrong, it's because you don't understand. So listen to his advice, accept his musar, leman techkam be'achritecha, so all that you've received early on will help you in your future years. That is why it's so important to give children the musar as early as possible. The older he gets, the more difficult it is to convince them. They're more set in their ways. So Shema etzah vekabel musar, listen to this advice early on, so this can eventually help you in your later years. We've come to a very famous pasuk now. We've come to a pasuk that many of us say every day in the tefillah. Rabot v'chashavot b'lev ish, v'atzat Adonai hi takum. Familiar pasuk. There are many thoughts in a man's heart, but Hashem's plan is what will stand, what will come out. This pasuk is a very significant pasuk. Anybody understand Yiddish over here? Yeah, I knew you. In Yiddish there's a saying, a Mensch tracht und der Eibishter lacht. A man thinks and God laughs. We have all our thoughts and all our plans and all these ideas that we're planning, and Hashem is laughing.
Exactly.
That's not what's going to happen. I have other plans for you, Hashem says. So a man thinks, he makes plans, but Hashem laughs. Says nothing. See, in Yiddish it rhymes. You know, what's going to come out of it? Nothing. So rabot b'chashavot b'lev ish. One has many thoughts, but just keep in mind, v'atzat Hashem hi takum. Hashem's plan is what's going to come out in the end, not necessarily one's plan. Another point that one can infer from this pasuk is never push off a plan. I have time for this. I'm going to get around to this a little bit later on. You really? Maybe not. Maybe you will never make it, Chaz v'shalom. Maybe something else may happen. So never push off. Rabbi tells in Pirkei Avot, Shema lo tipaneh. That day that you're looking for may never come. You may never have a free moment to do it. So do it now. Don't put off for tomorrow what you can do today. That's the saying in many languages. Whatever you can do today, don't push off for tomorrow. Another idea of Rabot B'chashavot B'lev ish is that many people take credit for doing something that they did. I planned it, I prepared it, I thought about it, They don't realize, Ki hu hanoten lecha koach lasot chayil, the Torah says. He's the one that gives you the strength. He's the one that gives you the advice. And there's a very interesting translation in Unkelos. Unkelos is the Aramaic, the Babylonian Aramaic translation of the Torah. There's Yonatan ben Uziel, which is another dialect of Aramaic from Israel. In the Unklos, in the Tirgum of Unklos, on this pasuk, Ki hu hanoten lecha koach lasot chayil, he says something very interesting. Hashem is the one that gives you advice when to buy real estate. It's interesting. The pasuk doesn't talk about real estate, but the Unklos says that's what it applies to. He is the one that gives you advice when to buy and when to sell. A lot of people have told me, I wish I would have bought it last year before it went up. Hashem did not give you that advice. He gave it to someone else. Other people need to make it in life too, not only you. Right? I wish I did not sell it. I wish I would have waited a couple more years. But somebody else needed to buy it at a low price. Right? So never feel bad about it, because everything is part of the mazal. Everything is part of Hashem's plan. He's the boss. He runs the show. So Rabot Machshavot Belevish, Batzat Hashem Itakum, Ki hu hanoten lecha koach lasot chayil. He's the one, remember, that gives you the advice. He's the one that suggests when to do what to do. Another example of Rabot Machshavot Belevish is, there are some people who went out and spent 6 years in college to become lawyers. They had to pass the bar. I think it's about 6 years. No, 4 years of regular college.
3.
7? All right. And there's some who spend more because they didn't pass the bar the first time around. Guess what happens when they're 27 or so? They marry somebody, and their father-in-law brings them into the business, and the entire career is in the garbage. What a waste of time, no? Here they had made all these plans to become lawyers, but they're making more money working for their father-in-law. Now I don't blame them. If it's more money, if it's easier, if it's better, why not? But what does that show? It doesn't mean you shouldn't have gone to study, but it just is another example of one may think that he's going to earn his parnasah doing this, and in the end he ends up earning his parnasah from something completely different. Completely different. What is that? Atzat Hashem hitakum. Whatever Hashem's plan is, that's what's going to happen, not our plans. So we have to be prepared for that. The Midrash talks about this pasuk, about Avshalom. You know who Avshalom was? One of the sons of David HaMelech, rebellious son. He wanted to kill his father and become king. He made plans, and Hashem says, I don't have that kind of a plan for you. You're making that kind of a plan. Vatzat Hashem itakum. It didn't work out like that, dear. Whose plan? Who was meant to be king? Shlomo HaMelech. Not Avshalom, not Adoniyahu. Shlomo HaMelech. Very important pasuk. This is incredibly important because we live through our life and experience all sorts of things, and we go through disappointing moments where we thought things would work out one way. Just remember, most things are not in our hands, are beyond our control. There's some things that are within our control. Matters of free will that concern our mitzvot and averot, whether we wake up in the morning and go to pray in a minyan, whether we put on tefillin, whether we put on tzitzit, whether we eat kosher, whether we say lashon hara or not. That's, we can control that more or less. But what happens in our lives, in the outside world, what kind of children one has, even though they're your children, you don't have complete control over them. They have their own free will. You can do your best to influence them, to give them the best education, but even that is not a guarantee. So you have to remember, you have to leave it to Hashem, and of course pray that things should work out as best as possible. Next pasuk, Ta'avat Adam Chasdo v'tov rash mi'ish kazav. The attraction to a man is his kindness, and a poor man is better than a liar. Ta'avat Adam Chasdo. The reason why people like to befriend somebody is because of his chasdo, his kindness, his favors, his money. But there's a lot of people who promise a lot and they don't deliver. So he tells us, you're better off with a poor man than with a liar. In other words, you're better off with one who doesn't have too much, but at least he keeps his word. His promise is a promise. His word is a word. And he will not promise what he does not have, because he doesn't have anything. You're better off associating with him. We saw similar pasuk to this last week. You're better off associating with these simple people who have nothing, but at least they keep their word, than somebody who has a lot of money, who you depend on him, but in the end he will disappoint you. He will lie to you. So just be careful. This is just advice to those who really depend on those people in higher positions, those people who have money, They think, oh, they're going to be kind to me, they're going to help me out. Not necessarily. You're better off being friends with the one who has no money. Fear of the Hashem is for life, and he will rest satisfied, not to be visited by evil. Alright. Basically what the pasuk means is as follows. Yirat Hashem, fear of Hashem, leads to life. One who's God-fearing doesn't have any fears, he sleeps well. V'savea, one who is satisfied or content with what he has, yalin bali pakedra, and no harm will befall him. This is talking about an individual who has complete confidence, complete bitachon in Hashem, yirat Hashem. Therefore he has no fears, he sleeps well. He doesn't have all the desires that other people have. He's savea, he's content with a little bit of that he has. Therefore yalin, he's able to sleep, he's able to be restful, he's calm. If things don't work out for him, he's not concerned. So Yirat Hashem, this kind of an attitude leads lechaim. It leads to life, to a better life. The commentaries also tell us that Yirat Hashem lechaim v'savea yalin bali pakedra is talking about an individual who, because of his God-fearingness, he despises all the luxuries in the world. In other words, he doesn't care about them. And because he doesn't care about them, he doesn't have the desires, doesn't have the aspirations for it, he can do without them. People who cannot do it without certain things are unhappy, they're jealous of others, they go out of their way to get what they really can't afford. They borrow the money. In order to avoid all of that, one has to develop his Yirat Hashem in realizing that whatever Hashem gave me, that's what He wants me to have. Had He wanted me to have something else, He would have given it to me. The fact that I don't have it is because I'm better off without it. That's the right attitude. That's called savea. He's content with whatever he has. That's very difficult for some people. Now, it doesn't mean that somebody who's poor should just accept his fate like that. You should pray that things should become better, that your situation should be alleviated, that Hashem should help you with your expenses, but not to complain, chas v'shalom to Hashem, not to lose sleep over it. There were people who were very, very poor, and they had no food in the house whatsoever, but they always knew that Kadosh Baruch Hu will not fail them. In other words, at the last moment, one way or another, they will be helped. And in the end, Yeshuat Hashem kiheref ayin. That requires Yirat Hashem, bitachon b'Hashem. Next pasuk, Taman atzel yado b'tzalachat, gam el pihu lo yeshivena. A lazy man hid his hand in a kettle. I don't know why he calls it kettle. Tzalachat means a plate. He puts his hand into the plate. He will not return it even to his mouth. In other words, he's so lazy, he puts his hand, the plate, and he doesn't put the food back in his mouth. Now, what is he talking about over here? We know people are very lazy, and we explained what laziness does before. You don't get things done quickly, you don't get things done at all. Here he's describing a situation where a person begins to do something and he doesn't finish it. There are a lot of people who have this characteristic. They initiate, they begin to do something, and they just never finish it. They put their hand in the plate, but they don't take the food and put it into their mouth. The commentators explain that one has to be very careful that this should not be the attitude in melechet shamayim when it comes to mitzvot. Even in your own garden, you start to prepare your yard and you don't finish it, it would be a shame, but it's not the end of the world. So you want to have tulips in the spring if you didn't plant the bulbs in time. The bulbs, they have to be planted in time. You know when? You know that too? Tulips? When do you plant bulbs? When do you plant the tulips? What?
No.
That's when they come out. He knows.
No.
Huh?
No. January.
Yeah. In the fall, or late, not too much in January, because depending on the climate. Here you could still do it, but in the East Coast, January is too cold. In this climate, you could still do it as far as latest as December, January, maybe, because it needs enough time to come out. So anyway, if you didn't do it on time, okay, it's not the end of the world. The yard, the garden, so you want to have tulips. But if it's melechet shamayim, rabbis tell us, therefore, hamatchil b'mitzvah omrim lo gemor. Whoever begins with a mitzvah, they tell him, you finish it. You do it. Don't let somebody else do it. You started with the mitzvah, go ahead and do it. The Yetzer Hara always attempts to interrupt, to delay, to discourage, So when it comes to Melechet Shamayim, be careful that you shouldn't just put your hand on the plate and leave it there. You began with the mitzvah, you finish it. This example of putting your hand on the plate is also true with any effort. Rabbis tell you can't just sit back at home and do nothing. Just like it requires the hands to put food in your mouth, you take food from the plate and put it into your mouth. In the same way, anything in life, you want to succeed, you got to make an effort. You read the newspaper, not the gossip, the sports section. You read the end, what do you call it? All the ads for the obituaries? No.
Classified.
The classified, yeah. Obituaries sometimes too, yeah. Got to go to which funeral to go. Yeah. Is it a classified section? Classified. Yeah. You read the classified because you want to get a job. I took a course in real estate appraisal. I finished, I did my effort. And now I have to look for a job. So I opened up the LA Times, I think it was a Sunday, and I saw an ad, assessor's office, training. And I went for it, and I was there for over 15 years. And it worked out. You got to make your ishtadlut. You got to make your effort. Right? You can't sit back. You got to put your hand, right? And Hashem will bless it. But if you don't do anything, unless one is a big tzaddik, or he sits at home and everything comes to him, the way the nature works, the way we do things is by making an effort, and then Hashem blesses the efforts. Next pasuk. Let's take ufeti yarim v'ochiach lenavon yavin da'at. Beat a scorner, and a simple man will gain cunning. Reprove a man of understanding, and he will understand knowledge. In other words, if you rebuke the clown, the scorner, you may not get results. He's a clown. He's not serious. But don't worry. If there's other people around him that are listening, at least ufeti yarim, at least the one who is a petty, the one who is a simple man, he will gain cunning, he will gain understanding. Reprove a man of understanding, and he will understand knowledge. In other words, don't think that your efforts are wasted just because you didn't get anywhere with the left. There may be other people who will gain something from it if they're in the class, if they're around. And this is important because, as the Torah points out, B'chol hanisharim yishme'u v'yirau. Bet Din used to carry out the death penalty on some cases. Did he learn his lesson or not? Maybe, maybe not. But at least everybody around who heard about the death penalty, they'll take notice of that. They'll be careful not to do what he did. So even though you rebuke the lesson, you don't get anywhere. Feti yarim, the petty, the simple people may understand, may get something out of it. And the same is true with the navon, the one who has understanding. The good students, people who hear what you have to say, will do something about it. You're talking to a crowd. You're telling them how they need to be careful with Shabbat. It's a crowd which is not very careful with Shabbat. And you might say, I'm wasting my time, these people don't care. You never know, there may be one individual there who, your words are going to make a difference to him. Next pasuk, Meshaded av yavriach em ben mevishu machpir. This one is also a very complex pasuk, but I think the message is very clear. He says like this: a son who causes shame and disgrace, robs his father, puts his mother to flight, makes her run away. What is he talking about? He's talking about a child who is yatzale tarbut ra'ah, as we would call it in Hebrew, who went off the derech, who became a disgrace to his parents. This kind of a child, if you're not careful with him, in the end, he ends up robbing his father. Now, what does robbing his father have to do with anything? Of all things, he robs his father. As I was learning this pasuk, what came to my mind is as follows. Today, kids who get trapped in drugs, exactly, in the end, they take money from their parents.
Big money.
Big money. They rob them in order to be able to satisfy this craving that they have. So you have to be very, very careful that this should never happen. You have to stop it immediately, do whatever you can and not let it go, not be forgiving about the situation, and seek professional help if necessary. Because that's what these things lead to. They lead to a child who's a disgraceful child to robbing his father. But what about the second part? Yavriach em. he makes his mother run away. Some commentaries say that it's talking about a situation where a child can sometimes cause the parents to get divorced because they both have different opinions on how to deal with him. I don't think that is necessarily what Shlomo Melech had in mind. I think Yavriach Em is that the child eventually loses touch with his mother too. In other words, a child may lose touch. In other words, he's gone off the derech so much, he's become so rebellious that the mother, who's been so close to him, maybe even closer than the father, will eventually lose touch with him. Maybe. That's another interpretation, another idea. He's causing the whole house to fall apart. That's another way of looking at it. A ben nevishu machpir, a disgraceful son. Therefore what? He's not just telling us the facts, he's telling us be careful about this situation where this is where it could lead to. Next pasuk, Chadal beni lishma musar lishgot mimrei da'at. This is also a pasuk which if you read it you won't understand it at first because the way it reads it doesn't make sense. Chadal beni lishma musar. My son ceased to stray from words of knowledge to hear discipline. Well, I think his translation is not bad. In other words, if you just read it in the order the way the words appear, you might think he's telling us, my son, don't listen musar anymore. It's not saying that, Chas v'shalom. He's saying like this, Chadal beni, let go of all your ways, your evil ways. Lishma musar, listen to the musar. Otherwise, lishgot mimrei da'at. Otherwise, what you're doing is making mistakes. You're straying from words of knowledge. That's one way of understanding it. Chadal beni, let go of your ways and listen to the musar. Another interpretation of this pasuk is that it's a warning. And the warning is as follows. Chadal beni lishma musar, if you're going to hold yourself back and not listen to all the musar, lishgot mimrei da'at, you will be making mistakes. You will be straying away from words of knowledge. So again, he calls out to the son, be careful. When you are told something, when you're given musar, listen to it. This may be the only thing that will save your life. Ed Belial yalitz mishpat ufir reshaim yivala aven. A godless witness, I don't know why he calls it a godless witness. A witness who is a Belial, he's a wicked witness, not a good witness. Testifies in judgment, but violence will devour the mouth of the wicked. What is that?
Not God-fearing.
Yeah. Not God-fearing, one who's is a rasha, he's not a good person. Yeah, I don't like the translation over here. Basically what it means is as follows. Ed Belial yalitz mishpat. There are some wicked witnesses who don't have good intentions. And therefore when they judge a situation, they judge it, they don't give the benefit of the doubt, they only see the negative. And when they go to court, yalitz, they dress up their comments to fit what they want to say. And as a result of that, they sometimes even say more than they should. They don't accurately report what they saw. Or the mouth of the wicked covers up any evil. Why is he telling this to us? Because you have to be careful when you hear something coming from somebody that is somewhat suspicious, not very observant, not very God-fearing. Look into the matter, investigate it. There's something in English. There's a saying about the mouth of a horse. Anybody remember here? You have to look careful at, forget exactly what the saying is, at what is being told to you, because you don't know you don't really know where it's coming from. If it's a reliable source, because the Rashaim don't have the best interests of that individual necessarily in their mind. They are going to cover up whatever it is that they want to cover up, and therefore investigate it. Get to the bottom of it. The last pasuk for now, and the last pasuk of the perek, Nachonu laletzim shefatim u'mahalumot legei kisilim. Punishments are prepared for the scorners and blows for the body of the fools. The last pasuk is basically saying the scorners don't get it. The only language they understand is shefatim in malumot, being hit by punishment and by blows. So sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings about on those individuals who are scorners pain in this world for two reasons. One is an onesh. An onesh is not a punishment the way we understand it. Hashem doesn't just punish, it's a kapara for their avon. But it's more than that. For letzim, for certain individuals who are scorners, who are clowning around, who are not serious in life, all the speeches that they've been given was not helpful. The only thing that will help them perhaps will be a blow, chas v'shalom. So the blow not only is a kapara, is not only an atonement, but it's also meant as a way to wake them up. It's a wake-up call. And sometimes that's what's necessary, for somebody to learn, like we say in English, the hard way. When it comes to our children, we don't want them to learn the hard way. So long as they're under our jurisdiction in our homes, where we exert the most control over them, we want to provide for them a comfortable, warm home, place where they can feel secure, and where they realize that everything that is being told to them is for their benefit, in the gentle way, as I said before, in the most gentle way possible. If it doesn't help, you may have to apply a little bit more, be a little bit more strict with them, and perhaps seek help for that. And if nothing helps, then maybe Hashem has to do his part in waking them up. After all, he's also a partner, remember, in not only the creation of the human being, but also in raising the child and eventually marrying him off. He's the shadchan. He's the one that sets him up with his soulmate. So we should never give up hope, and as we've said it before, if nothing else helps, never give up on praying to Hashem. That is what our mothers have always done, right before lighting the candles of Shabbat, in praying to Hashem that their children should remain Jewish, they should be healthy, they shouldn't assimilate, Kadosh Baruch Hu should provide them with all that they need. That was a time of prayer, and they meant it. So a father should never give up on praying and asking Hashem to help in this matter. This is a very difficult area, raising children, and we need Hashem's help. And even the best of parents have had very difficult times, very challenging times with some children, where they don't understand what happened. The two are good parents, really good parents, tzaddikim. We have Yitzchak and Rivka who had an Esav too. Yitzchak and Rivka, tzaddikim, had Esav. And there's a lot of reasons why such neshamot come into their homes, and I'm not going to get into that right now. But the main thing is, don't go to sleep. Remember, we have a tremendous responsibility as parents to direct the children as best as possible, and to pray that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should also help us in this tremendous challenge. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ya'azor, that we should be able to raise our children to be God-fearing Jews, B'ezrat Hashem.